And I saw a very interesting post. I think that was posted by Komodo, and then it mentioned you that says AI or LLMs are failing biopharma. I mean, that's, for an AI professional like us, I mean, that's blasphemy, right? What made you say that?
It wasn't AI failing biopharma. I think what we started learning is, what does pharma need to succeed?
How do you believe that a problem that has not been solved for about 20 odd years, even more, how sure are you that that's going to solve?
Let me try to put the problem in context to your audience. Imagine if you're running a $1 trillion retail chain. 30% of your stores never sell a single product. 30% of the trial site never enroll a patient. And 80 to 85% of clinical trials don't meet their enrollment target.
So what I did was I started doing a thought experiment. I decided to sort of, ask a few frontier AI models on what they think is going to be a human existential crisis. Are they actually going to kill us, right? And one thing that completely shook me was everyone told me that welcome to the best AI show on Pharma. I'm Ayush Mishra, and my guest tonight is Chandi Kodthiwada. I'm sorry if I messed that up. From Komodo Health. Our partnership between Anervea, which is my AI startup, and Komodo, which is his organization, has brought us together recently. And it's been incredible collaborating with someone who has dedicated more than a decade, to solving life sciences toughest problems through data science. And I'm sure he's going to talk a lot about the kind of amazing products that he has built for life sciences. And he has built them at some of the industry's most respected companies. He now leads all product development at Komodo. So before we start, let me caution everyone. Chandi is so well spoken and so well articulate that he may come across as a large language model himself, but trust me, he's definitely real. Chandi, welcome.
Thanks for the kind words. I hope to live up to it. Excited to be in this conversation and speak about AI and clinical trials. Super exciting times for both AI in my career and clinical trials overall. Awesome. I'm really excited. And I was telling you before we started recording that I have a lot of questions of my own that I need to ask you. And the first thing I wanted to ask you, I was going through some of your LinkedIn posts and some of the comments that you have done, you have made. And I saw a very interesting post. I think that was posted by Komodo, and then it mentioned you that says AI or LLMs are failing biopharma. I mean, that's, for an AI professional like us, I mean, that's blasphemy, right? Tell me what made you say that. It wasn't AI failing biopharma. I think what we started learning was, what does pharma need to succeed in the context of, we have large complex problems, and can I just buy a base model and throw it at a bunch of data I already have? Does that solve a problem? And our realization over and over was that about most POCs have mixed results at best and negative results in most cases. We wanted to study why and what, and so on and so forth. And our realization, if you're interested, we can dive in, was effectiveness of what someone gets out of an LLM is based on how simpler, organized, and analytical the context window is. What is someone able to give to the AI to get the result that they're interested in? And there's proven research around, the more you shove into a context window, the lower quality of the outcome it would be, and the more directional and more guided approach you take. That's our realization. And we can clearly see, if we spoke to, let's say, 10 of our customers, wherever we have heard success stories or, percent success stories, It's that our realization of they've done an incredible job of detailing what the question is, what the solution path is, and what kind of data that goes in. So maybe we took a blasphemous way to make a point, and the point is that we need to own the context and nail what goes into the context window, and that's what's yielding us results of what we have done and what we've heard from customers.
So, and I think you mentioned on point. So, um, clinical research is obviously a big black hole, and there've been so many people trying to solve it for ages, right? Much before AI came in, and even the basic problems like recruitment intelligence, site intelligence, and for some reason, the brightest of the minds in the world have not been able to sort of solve it to the best. It is my personal belief that if there is any company in the world who can solve that, needs to work with real world data, right? I mean, that's your go-to, which is your zone as well. Uh, how do you believe that a problem that has not been solved for about 20 odd years, even more, how do you believe a team that uses really gold real world data bunched up with a bit of an AI, how sure are you that that's going to solve?
Yeah. Let me try to put the problem in the context to your audience. Imagine if you're running a $1 trillion retail chain, 30% of your stores never sell a single product.
Yeah.
That's the reality today. That is what we accept as operational possibility. 30% of the trial sites never enroll a patient. And 80 to 80%, 85% of clinical trials don't meet their enrollment targets. So from a frequency and prevalence of the problem, it's deep, it's wide, it's wide. And the challenge with feasibility analysis with clinical trials, this is me showing my age. 17 years ago, I was at a large pharma, and the question was, let's do feasibility on this type 3 oncology study, and we want to run studies in Belgium, in a few of the North American countries. And the answer was, Lori in Belgium would know which sites to pick. And John in the US would know what sites to pick. That was 17 years ago. And unfortunately, sure, there's been a lot of data science and algorithms applied to this data, but we're still close to that. Let's depend on person A because, they know the best on which site to work. What excites me here is we have, and as I'm sure, deeply entrenched in the problem yourself, the right combination of uh, prevalent RWE data, HCP and HCO data, prior clinical trial experience, visibility of patient availability within, let's say, a few miles of the research site, and the HCP's prior clinical trial experience. What could have been weeks, if not months long statistical endeavor in the olden days is now a few minutes, if not, half a day or a weekend's worth of analysis to get to give me a highly reliable, proven set of sites. And now there's enough, even compute available to do forecasting that teams have historically done, but forecasting alongside with RWE data, different game.
Yeah. Uh, as you said, I'm with you. I'm myself trying to solve the same problem using similar tools. Uh, for the audience, can you kind of paint a picture in terms of how the world changes once? Maybe we do not, as you said, we don't have to solve the entire problem. We just have to improve the chances of it. How does the world in general changes because we have been able to do
The best way I can is describe like the state of how we do and what we do clinical trials is it's unsustainable complexity. And what I mean by that is if you talk to one of the top 10 pharmas, the challenge that they're struggling with is clear human scale. They're going to run more clinical trials 10 years from now. And the people they need to run these trials, they just can't train and enable them fast enough. They're going to need more humans than what they can bring on board to run the trial volume that they're interested in running. Right. So we're at this interesting intersection around how do we apply everything we've got to achieve efficiency scales. This came directly from one of the top 10 pharmas where they were contemplating we can't train clinical data managers enough and fast enough, and my trial volume is going. And so how I see the world changing is towards these aspects of what large swaths of clinical trial, primarily around operations, could be automated. It's deeply a repetitive, highly automatable problem. I'll take a quick example. FDA published, this paper around what have they been able to achieve when they applied generative AI in clinical trial summary and narrative documentation. This is FDA, the highest possible compliant way of doing things, at least in this part of the world. And their realization is they're able to see 30% efficiency gain in being able to write certain things, and much higher when you apply to something of lower compliance needs. Right. And to maybe I'll end with one more example. Like we hire PhD research scientists, and so what we end up asking them to do is fill Excel spreadsheets and write boilerplate text. And if Gen AI can do the boilerplate text generation, it frees them up from the operational burden and focus on the science of the molecule. And so, to simplify, how does the world change now that we have certain tech? I think we're about to give certain superpowers back to people who have spent decades honing their skills on science and deep subject matter, and take away some of the operational burden. We're about to make their skill and talent sing in a way that is holistically impacting speed and cost of clinical trial research.
And that automatically translates to more trials happening, more trials getting approval, trials getting approved faster. I mean, products getting approved faster to the market, patient burden. So that's a huge impact.
Yeah. I speak to career-long pharma people. I can sense the palpable excitement and energy around. We have struggled with this problem for 2, 3, 4 decades, based on how experienced the person is. We finally are seeing certain things that we never thought were possible. It's real. There's a whole lot of excitement at pharma, not only theoretical, but real life applicable examples. Yeah.
I've seen that myself when we use your platform. There's another thing that's very exciting, and you did not mention it, so I would want to, which is this tool that you guys have recently launched called Marmut, if I'm pronouncing it right. Can you in the most brief and simpler way explain what this tool does?
Yeah, sure. Imagine having access to 330 million plus population in the US, and you simply are trying to understand patient journey of a particular therapeutic area or drug effectiveness in a particular region of the country, it usually takes you a few weeks and a few $100,000 to get to an answer. Now, what we've done is we poured this, decade plus experience around how we wrote algorithms to do patient journey modeling, to do competitive effectiveness, to analyze switching behavior. And we gave this superpower around if a business executive is interested in simply asking the question, it doesn't need to take 6 to 9 weeks and $250,000 to come back with an answer. And we put the analytical rigor and the data scale and the compute scale behind. So Marmut is simply a elegant natural language way and generative AI way of asking the question, and we do the application of methods and scientific rigor and come back with a certain set of analysis, the same rigor that you would expect from a highly studied SME and a consultant. And the beauty of it is not that we're producing a prettier bar chart or a much more detailed Kaplan-Meier curve to do survival analysis. It's the actual 5 to 7 things that we would recommend to an executive. And we did the training and context management to make that effective around it's not only a set of prettier visuals, but also clinical interpretation and summary and analysis recommendation. So in essence, what would have taken 6 to 12 weeks in a $250,000 project is now a few minutes worth of chatting with Marmut.
Wow. So help me understand, because what you simply said was, here is a Claude or a GPT kind of a platform that's trained on the data of 330 million patients, right? And that is at the disposal of a pharma executive, which on his will, at the speed of thought, can generate answers, right? Recommendations.
Yeah, I would add a couple of things.
Yeah.
One, it's not a model. Our realization and research has been certain models are effective for certain things. So we kind of created this lattice of models, and based on the question being asked, we figure out which model is effective for what kind of problem solving. And we've also solved for this, the shock and blank slate problem around people still haven't figured out how to work with AI. So we've also had to solve for this view around if you ask an ineffective question, how do you correct for and guide the person interacting with in a way that they understand how to holistically ask the question? And then kind of go into this analysis mode and apply various methods. In this case, if the question is simply about survival analysis, we know there is in our algorithm, we know there is a method that does Kaplan-Meier analysis. We know how to interpret the survival curve or the Kaplan-Meier curve. And we have the ability, and the magic here is the complexity of US healthcare system is healthcare data is coded in a whole lot of terminologies. ICD-10, NDC, and you name it, 5 different types of codes.
Yeah.
And so the magic has been being able to have this, decades worth of experience to simply understand the disease context and the analysis context. And if anything, we've mastered these two things that allows us to answer the question more effectively.
From your experience, I just want to sort of switch to, because we're talking about partners, consultants, and I know Komodo works with a wide variety of clients across the spectrum. You work with consultants, you work with startups like us, you work with pharma companies. Taking an example of Anervea, and we did this strategic partnership where we are also trying to build an AI layer on top of Komodo's data. And we're also trying to solve a smaller problem with clinical research. How do you see the prospect of startups using proprietary data platforms like Komodo? So how do you see sort of these partnerships evolving in the future? Obviously, I'm asking for myself, but in the larger context of things, because I meet with startup founders, quite regularly, and one thing that every AI startup in life sciences, one biggest challenge that they face is lack of data. Because if that's public data, yeah, you can't do too much about it. And if you need high quality proprietary data like that of Komodo, there are not too many options, right? We were blessed to have a partnership with you guys. So what would be your advice to those guys? How do you see this evolving, this relationship?
I'll take you back to a conversation I had with the founder of the company when we were talking about who Anervea is and what our partnership could look like. The pie of problems to be solved is big enough, and the size and the resources we as Komodo have are limited.
Yeah.
So we like our view of how we keep continuing on the mission sometimes has to be accelerated in a particular segment or a particular channel of customers. And this is where we see like a perfect marriage of what partnerships do. We actually approach partnerships with a diligent philosophy that we want to accelerate mission for people who are working in these problems and want to own and drive solutions to those. We want to do everything we can in the same way, the same tools that we use to solve problems. We want to bring the same set of capabilities, data, infrastructure, software capabilities. To be specific, like how do you run a sub-minute query on 1.2 trillion rows of data? A startup shouldn't be burdened with cost of doing business features. And we've kind of solved the paving the road part of features. The last mile problems still exist. Lots of it in payer and provider in financial sectors in life sciences, and life sciences itself is huge enough. So we see partnership as an effective way to accelerate mission, where we see, hey, it's too far on our roadmap that we are not going to be able to impact. So where we see this win-win alignment with partners, we would want to invest, and we want to make sure we bring the best of Komodo to them so they can go have the impact that they're looking for and whatever their mission is. Like, this is where we love the idea behind Anervea, that it's a noble cause. It's a prevalent problem around enrollment, recruitment, trial effectiveness. And obviously, I'm a huge fan of the team's work, Ayush, and the problem space is deeply close to my heart. This is all like a great match around there's mission alignment. I love the problem. I love how we work with the team so far. So super excited to what comes out as launch one.
Wow, appreciate that. I thought you were saying you're also a fan of Ayush, but yeah, maybe I heard.
Ayush is included in the team. Who doesn't love a CEO who has a Iron Man mask behind them?
Since you noticed, thank you for that. Let me a quick trivia on this. When I started my first company, and so I've always been a big Iron Man fan. So when I started my first company, and I have I made enough money to splurge on myself. I ordered this from China.
Well, for your audience's sake, I have to ask this question: what function does it have? Can it do any tricks?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. It works on. So this is more than 10 years old, by the way. So let me see you.
That should be the podcast screenshot, by the way.
So it's not working as much, but this is more than 10 years old.
Yes.
But for me, this is a sense of my first achievement.
I'm saying startup founders are generally weirdos, right? So I'm one too.
They have to have the passions they have. I think that's what drives them to owning and driving crazier problems. Because someone said this earlier, and it kind of resonated. Was guts and ability to lead comes from looking at exactly the same thing other people saw, but thinking differently about what you want to do about it and how you want to solve it. Like, yeah, founders have that aura for a reason, because that's their motive, that's their MO. They view things differently.
I hope my team agrees. My team hate me for this because every time they would come to me with a challenge and they're like, we need this, we need more resources to build this and everything. Every single time I would tell them, but Tony Stark was able to make arc reactor in a cave. They hate me for it, but they can't do anything about it. So, anyways, so real world evidence, to me, I mean, this is something that excites me the most in terms of how AI can, what AI can do for life sciences. Purely because real world evidence is also something that is very specific to the US. You go out of the US, there's not much authentic real world evidence that any other country generates at the scale that what US does. So obviously, I would like to believe that US is already at an advantage because of this real world evidence ecosystem. In your view, plainly in your perspective, in the future, do you actually see real world data becoming the primary evidence for many indications, like with trials playing a supporting role? Or do you think, this is too early to think?
See, RCTs, or randomized clinical trials, are gold standard. The This is during my time while I was working for a pharmaceutical company. The struggle we had working in highly lethal diseases was that it wasn't ethically or even morally possible to conduct a clinical trial where the mortality rate is so high. We can't treat a stage 5 certain oncology patient with placebo. That's just isn't possible. Like, in those cases, the only viable way to study the condition of the disease and the progression of the disease is through real world data and real world evidence.
Yep.
And putting together that evidence. So there are certain acceptable today standard mode of operating, and in those cases, RWE is the only way to study. So to your point, will it ever replace randomized clinical trial? It does today because it's ethically not possible to do a clinical trial in certain high fatal conditions. There's been a whole lot on digital clinical trials and how RCTs could be shaped in a way the patient burden is lower. We've kind of seen the swing of it and waned a little in the past, let's say 3 to 5 years. But during COVID times, it took off incredibly well, and most of the operational complexities around how do you do decentralized clinical trials have been solved, at least at the larger firms.
Yes.
But the question I want to answer is not if RCTs would take a second seat to RWE. The question I want to answer is, with all of these capabilities, is still a 10-year and $2.2 billion cost absolutely necessary to do clinical trials? And how could we change RCTs in a way that it is much shorter and much cheaper and more effective? And RWE could be a huge player in both making it cheaper and running it faster. Evidence is COVID drug. Typically, the pharma I work for launched dengue vaccine. It took about 11 and a half years for us to launch the vaccine. And when compared to COVID, it took us 18 months to get the first drug out. Obviously, world paused and a whole lot of critical things. But it wasn't that we took shortcuts. It actually was that we took calculated risks and put real world data and real study of real world evidence alongside the 18 months that allowed regulatory bodies to understand what they're approving and study the safety and efficacy of the drugs.
Correct.
So back to your question, will RCTs take a second step to RWEs? No. I think RCTs are gold standard. I think they should be done that way, but they could be run much faster, much cheaper to a point where you wouldn't have this question around, do I still need to run trial? Because running the trial is so simpler and so effective and so on and so forth. The intent is to make that question irrelevant and to do it at scale.
So I asked a few models, plain sort of chat. And one thing that completely shook me was everyone told me that humanity might might be in danger by themselves even much before AGI, just purely based on narrow AI, because everyone has started believing AI a lot. An output that is generated by AI, no one. I mean, even if ChatGPT puts up a footer that says "Don't trust everything I write," everyone takes it as Bible. Um, and I'm sure more mature and responsible companies like yours, I mean, do have processes and they put, I mean, you must have checks and balances on how to do that. We do it internally. Do you feel that, and especially working with enterprise pharma, and you know this better than I, they have much more stronger questions around it than any other industry around the world, right? Uh, how important do you see this as part of the entire game of sort of building AI, making things easier?
Let me switch to a bit of enterprise pharma and privacy concerns. Right? Most pharmaceutical companies, this was maybe 2 decades ago, it was a battle to put $1 billion molecule data on a publicly available web front end. Back in the day, we were working with a EDC company, and this was one of the top 10 pharma, and their belief was that we put billions into putting this molecule data. We're not going to put this on a publicly accessible web API.
Yeah.
Today, more than 90% of clinical trials data are available on API endpoints.
Yeah.
Highly secured, proven, tested, and there is that buy-in from pharma that it is secure to use and so on and so forth. Right. So with LLMs, there is sure a cautious approach around what will the model learn from me and what would I get from the model. Right. So some of the questions that we get into today is what kind of inference are you running and how would you use the inference you run on my data? And are you going to inform, let's say, a competitor? Right? So the questions we get into more about edge-based learning and how do we not take inference from their infrastructure or be able to run even inference on their infra, but leave it there. So there's differential privacy, there's edge-based learning. That's the conversation we're getting into. It's mostly transactional. It's mostly, here's the problem I want to solve for you, but make me feel better that you're not taking $1 billion molecular inference and giving it to a competitor of mine or using it for yourself. So whatever be that. So right now, there is a whole lot that we can do based on infrastructure and product choices of how we could answer these questions. So from a privacy and governance standpoint, we have those product approaches that's helping the pharma companies rest at peace. But there is still non-competitive inference that could float the entire industry up. I don't think we're there yet, and we'll figure out how to do it when the industry is ready, on how to just do operational effectiveness. Everybody converts an ECRF dataset to a SDTM dataset. There's nothing competitive about it, but inference of variability of how many different types of demography forms you've collected and how to standardize it to, let's say, an SDTM dataset of demography. There's nothing in it. Nobody wins if you keep that to yourself, but everybody wins if you create an industry standard model that just makes it, snappier. I'd love to see it. I've done it in the past, but I don't have an answer to how do you do non-competitive industry level sharing of inference. Yeah, that would be a dream.
Wow. I have asked this question to almost every guest that I interviewed on this podcast. This is till date the most specific answer I have received. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I remember I was in a conference last year in Boston, and again it was everyone from the pharma, Boston that know how, who's who of Boston was there from the pharma circuit, and there was a round table, and there was a CEO of a big pharma guy, big pharma company sitting, COO I think, and he mentioned during the roundtable conference and said, "Look, my management thinks AI is antichrist, so purely because of that reason, we're not going to do it, right?" And then I would meet other folks, right, who want to do. I mean, they were searching for use cases. They were searching for places where they can use AI to get themselves better. So, I mean, and I'm sure there's going to be a debate like this, for long. But I think you had the most specific, on-point answer. So thank you for that. Awesome. So, before we kind of wrap up, what excites you the most today on the prospect of real world data and AI? I mean, if you take a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year vision, what one thing excites you the most?
This is maybe a message that was beaten into me while I was working for a Google company, and that mission was, it is not acceptable that it takes 10 years to go from this works to it being a prescribable drug, and it is not acceptable to go from a promise to a delivery being $2.2 billion. Like, the most thing that I'm excited about is if we solve for these things, the concept of what's called an orphan drug goes away. We can do this at scale, and we can do this at volume, and we can use human talent in the most effective possible way. That's the most exciting part to me, and I see very meaty areas in the life cycle of clinical trial design, conduct, submission, and post-trial monitoring that I'm super excited. Companies like you, companies like mine are focused on solving, and I see a whole lot of momentum from peers in the industry. 5 to 10 years from now, what we've been able to achieve with COVID drug, we should be able to see effective reduction in one, complexity, two, operational cost, the time it takes certain things, and we do things effectively. Hopefully that we bring that down to a year and a fraction of the cost.
And that's huge impact. That's
Yeah,
a huge,
yeah.
right?
Thank you so much, Chandi. I really loved this discussion. I truly believe I'm blessed, and my team is blessed to be working alongside Chandi's team, doing our part to try to solve a problem in clinical research. Where Chandi and their team are helping us a lot. So thank you very much, Chandi, for all the support, and thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate that.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Absolutely enjoyed it. He promised me a good show, and he delivered. But more than that, I'm incredibly excited about launch of what you're working on and the impact we could go have in the industry together. So I'm looking forward to all of it. So thanks again for having me here.
Thank you.